Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today it's my distinct pleasure to have Kevin Lee with us. I've known Kevin for decades now, since, I don't know, I think it was the 90s. It was certainly maybe it was 15 years or 20, I don't know. Anyways, it's been a long time. He's been around a long time. He founded Did It, a leading digital marketing firm, in 1996. So even before Google, he was doing SEO, and so was I. Kevin founded givingforward.org, a cause marketing nonprofit with a focus on generating revenues for other nonprofits. And previously to Giving Forward, Kevin founded WeCare, a cause marketing platform which generated over $8 million for nonprofits, becoming the inspiration for Amazon's Smile program, which has to date generated $350 million in donations. Kevin is also the CEO of the E-Marketing Association. Kevin invents marketing technology solutions for Did It clients and has written 4 books, spoken at more than 500 events, and published 700 articles on marketing. Kevin, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's kind of start from the beginning here. You've been in this game forever, since the SEO industry was in its infancy, and you've also been in paid search since pretty much the beginning. So how did you get into paid and organic, and like what's your origin story here?
Well, it's interesting. Even prior to founding Did It, I was doing digital marketing at that point in CompuServe, Prodigy, and AOL, and as well as creating floppy disk-based presentations in Macromedia Director and CD-ROM-based presentations. I wasn't the coder or the designer. I was the thinker, the strategist behind those types of things, and so. Did It was essentially almost like a spin-off of the original agency I had co-founded in '94 called Interact Multimedia, which doesn't exist anymore. But we realized that organic SEO was going to be big. We didn't realize how big. We really didn't. And we were looking at a platform called Submit It, and looking at how we could improve it. And Submit It, I believe, may have been. I'm trying to remember who founded Submit It, but I think it might have been Tony Hsieh from Zappos. Actually, may have founded Submit It, and or I think Submit It either may have been owned by him at some point. But
Scott
that's neither here nor
Bannister.
there. Was it? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So in any case, we thought, how could we improve upon Submit It? And we thought, well, having an ongoing monitoring feedback loop where you could not just know whether you were submitted or not, but get automated reports and then resubmission if your domain fell out of the search engines, which at the time, in those early search engines like Lycos, Excita, InfoSeek, et cetera, that it wasn't unusual for either on purpose or by accident, things would fall out of the database. And so we had sort of an automated resubmission process. So that was the very early beginnings of the Did It Detective, which was the tool you could use to find out if you were in there, and then the service to do the resubmission. We also were really early in paid search. The way we got into paid search is actually because before there were any rules about black hat SEO, we were a little bit black hat, and we were helping clients create doorway pages, highly relevant ones, not irrelevant ones, but we were helping clients create doorway pages, and in some cases we would host the doorway pages and charge them on a CPC basis. And so a guy from GoTo.com called us up and said, "Hey, do you want to buy some clicks from us? We're starting a search engine." And so we said yes and started building in-house tools long before we had released any of those tools to the public. And then, clients of ours said, "Oh, how are you managing the fact that you're buying tens of thousands of keywords and then reselling the clicks to us?" We said, "Oh, we built some technology to do that." And they said, "Well, why don't you release the technology?" So we did. And that was the beginning of all the various iterations of Did It's paid search tools. So it was quite the journey for us, to go from organic. Once it became verboten to do doorway pages, we stopped. But there was a period in time where there were no rules because nobody had written any yet. And this is pre-Google. Um, and so, we continue to evolve with the industry over time. Sometimes we'd be leading the charge on new things, and other times we would just be looking at what works really well and trying to do it slightly better.
Mm, that's cool. And what was the, I don't know, what was the pivotal moment or the kind of the synchronistic thing that caused the the biggest kind of leap forward for you in your career in those early days? Like there must have been some sort of chance occurrence that wasn't really chance. Like nothing's random. I mean, that's my experience is nothing is random. There's like two camps of people, right? There's the people who believe that everything is random, and then there is the belief that nothing is random. And then I subscribe to the latter philosophy that nothing is random. So what was that synchronistic event that like leaped you forward in your business, your career, your life?
I think there's probably been a ton when we've had to pivot. Uh, did it many times over the years. The sort of foundation event for Did It was really just the fact that we came up with the idea of Did It at the agency that I had co-founded along with a client. And so that client ended up becoming my business partner for 26 years. That was one of the sort of synchronistic events that was a catalyst. And then over the years, there were a lot of them, and some of them were not fun events at all. There were situations where, Did It had to fight a frivolous lawsuit, which I can't really talk about, but you could look it up, where somebody sued us because they didn't like the fact that our bidding algorithm that would go in there and compress out bid gaps was actually reducing their profit. And so, that ended up resulting in a sort of rough patch that we had to work our way through. But I'm a stoic philosophically, right? So the obstacle is the way is a book by Ryan Holiday that I ascribe
Yeah.
to, which is sometimes the obstacle becomes the motivation to sort of think through how sort of circumnavigate that obstacle. And certainly, I've had no shortages of those over the years that I've had to work my way around.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just looked up the definition of stoicism. It's the endurance of pain or hardship without without the display of feelings and without complaint.
That's one
Would
of them.
that
It's also a philosophy, but yes, that's the more standard usage of the word.
so if the obstacle's the way and you just see that this hardship is actually for your highest good, is that how you see it? Is there's a point, there's a purpose, there's a higher purpose to things like getting sued by some behemoth or a divorce or anything that you had to go through and seeing at the other end that, oh wow, that was actually a huge gift. My wife Orion likes to say that everything's a gift, but sometimes the bow is on the bottom.
Yeah, I think it's part of it is just philosophically when one looks at something in hindsight, the other sort of common colloquialism is what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? That's a sort
Yeah.
of an adjunct to the idea that the obstacle is the way. I don't. I'm not big on sort of comparing myself to people who perhaps felt you might look at them from the outside and say, oh well, their success just fell into their laps, right? It may or it may not have. That's not relevant. The I think the relevant thing is that if you continue to be purpose driven as an individual and as a business person, right, that you will find the way around that. Um, are you necessarily always saving the world? Right? When you build something that allows marketers to generate twice the ROI out of a click stream, that's not really saving the world. It's maybe selling more cornflakes. But whatever it is, there's a little bit of a mission driven mentality to it, in that you're sort of doing good in some way, right? Helping people in some way. And so I think that's where the stoicism fits in, because if you're service driven and you ascribe to sort of the stoicism philosophy of I can only control my reaction to what goes on around me, I can't control what other people are doing, right? And so that's I think important for an entrepreneur, because you're going to get a whole lot of situations where you just can't control the broader ecosystem. You just have to figure out how to continue to execute on your vision.
Mm. Was it Gandhi who said, "Be the change you want to see in the world"?
I believe so.
Yeah. You know, we can't change others. Yes, that's true, but we also have much more uh, influence over the world, like global events, than we give ourselves credit for, or we believe. Like we're way more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. We have the power within us. The power that lives within us creates worlds, literally creates worlds. That divine spark is inside of us. We are immensely powerful. So, one thing I've learned through my studies over the last year or so in the kind of metaphysical arena is that there's this multiverse of parallel universes happening, the infinite number of them, and we get to pilot one, and that's our universe. We are the observer. So if you're familiar with quantum physics, and I know this is a little off topic from marketing, we'll get back into marketing, but my understanding is that we're the pilot of the universe that we're observing, that we're in. And what that means is that we have the ability to change ourselves and thus change the field, the quantum field, the infinite possibilities we shape through our observation, like the double slit experiment in quantum physics. Light is both a wave and a particle, but once you observe the light, it only turns into a particle. It no longer is a wave of potentialities. And if you're curious, just Google that double slit experiment. It's pretty fascinating. So by observing, we collapse the multitude of possibilities in the multiverse into what happens in our universe. So you can have a positive outlook on things like just world events, conflicts between countries, and whatever kind of um, pandemics are happening, et cetera, and you can actually influence the outcome of that, right? Whether World War III happens or not is up to you. And you might think, well, how the heck does that happen? And it's based on the idea of the more benevolent you are, the more synchronicities you receive. So more benevolence, more synchronicities, more benevolence, more synchronicities, and so forth and so on. And you don't just get the upgrade to, like, essentially you're piloting the plane here, that's the universe, and you get upgraded to business class because you're extra benevolent, you're super proactive, and you're restricting your reactivity, so you get an upgrade. Well, the entire plane gets the upgrade too. So if World
That's
War III was going to happen, it no longer is going to happen because you're super benevolent. And so I got off on this tangent because you were talking about, well, there are a lot of things that you can't control. Just I actually think there's a lot more than we think is possible for us to influence, and all the way through to the fact of World War III happening or not happening is up to us. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Pretty out there.
No, I think that one's positivity and benevolence is absolutely has a viral ripple effect. Stoicism is really just more about the fact of not going home to cry in your soup if something bad happens, right? But rather just pick yourself up and continue to move forward because you couldn't
Yeah, pain
control.
is inevitable. Suffering is optional, right?
Yeah, that's another way to look at it. Absolutely. And I think as entrepreneurs, right, regardless of which of the philosophies you ascribe to, that element is pretty key because it's not going to probably be smooth sailing the whole way along. And figuring out how to best deal with the bumps in the road or the dips in the roller coaster is pretty key.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest dip in your roller coaster on this wild journey of not just the 26 years, but you've been in business for for longer than that, right? Because you were involved in a previous agency before.
Yeah, I mean, the previous agency, the outcome of that relationship wasn't positive for me. It ended up being more positive after some litigation, unfortunately, where I prevailed. But it
Oh
ended up
boy.
just being not being a sort of a happy parting of the ways, and so that was difficult. But there's also these challenges that get sort of thrown in front of businesses along the way, whether it was um, the litigation that did it had to go through. There was a platform that we built in partnership with a very large organization underdid it, where they basically chose to ignore a contract and sort of steal it, right? And then there are ones where if you just look at it through the right lens, you can actually be sort of joyous in the outcome, right? Which would be sort of my team and I having built We Care, cause marketing powered shopping platform, generating 8.3 million for nonprofits, and then having Amazon get inspired by our A/B split test to launch Smile. Right? Obviously, that may not have impacted me positively, but the fact that they're so big at this point, I can't argue with the positive karma, right, of that happening. So it's really just the lens that you look at it through sometimes, which you know uh, allows you to, in hindsight, realize, well, wow, that didn't feel so good at the time, but when I look at it through this lens, it's actually probably a net positive.
Hmm. Yeah. I do believe that you earned lots of brownie points in, in the heavens for that. So, what is karma to you, and how does that apply in marketing?
In marketing, the marketing business and business in general loves to use a lot of adversarial language, right? They use adversarial language as out of war. They'll use adversarial language as it relates to sports, right? In marketing, and it's always there's a lot of that baked in language about sort of winning, right? But you don't necessarily have to win. Somebody else doesn't necessarily have to always lose in order for you to win. And so I think that kind of way of applying best practices to marketing uh, can sometimes result in some really fun scenarios, right? Because if you think about SEO and co-creation of content, right, that's a win-win from the time that you make the deal with that other party to co-create that content. You're both winning right out of the gate. And so just applying that kind of positive karma based methodology to SEO, to digital PR, to PR, it results in a better outcome for everybody, right? I mean, I had a house on the beach in Fire Island, which is a sort of resort off of Long Island, and it was coming time to sell it. And I thought, oh, it's such a wonderful house. I mean, it's really Architectural Digest level quality. I'd love to get it some press since I'll be selling it, but nobody's going to write just about that house. I have to think about how do I create a positive story that that lots of people could benefit from. And so, you know, when I pitched the editor of the mansions section of the Wall Street Journal, I pitched her on how Fire Island was going through a renaissance and some of the old beach shacks were being invested in and some really beautiful new houses were being created. And so she says, "Oh, Fire Island's getting fancy." And I was like, okay, I guess you could look at it that way. And so she loved the idea. She sent out the photographer. We got pictures of ourselves, in our house. The house became the featured image for the article. And they ended up, interviewing dozens of other homeowners out there as well and writing this featured article in the mansion section of the Wall Street Journal. I wasn't the only one to benefit. I think property values probably went up as a result of that article across the entire Fire Island community. Sure, I got a really nice piece out of it, right? But it's philosophically, right? If you approach it from this, what's the wonderful story? What's the story that helps everybody? you can benefit by that, but you won't benefit alone. It's a rising tide theory.
Yeah. Yeah. So give and then get. Don't try and get all the time. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I like that. That resonates for me. So, the reason why we're doing this interview right now is because I listen to my intuition. So I get these out of the blue ideas and nudges to interview people, to reach out to old friends and colleagues and acquaintances that I haven't spoken to in years, sometimes even decades. And it's amazing what happens from this. And sometimes it's completely out of the blue, somebody that I had never even heard of. One of the past guests was somebody that uh, she's a copywriter, and I'd never heard her name before. And I heard the name in my sleep. I'm like, okay, that's a clear message. I can tell the difference between like random, not that anything is random, but just something that is coming from my subconscious versus something that's coming in from intuition. And I knew that was coming in through intuition, so I interviewed her. Um, anyway, so this is kind of an out there thing. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on intuition and how you might utilize that in your uh, daily role as a marketing firm owner, founder, and someone who's helping a lot of other companies in their marketing.
Yeah, I think intuition it may just be a way of describing sort of a variety of things. It could be something divine. It could be just thought processes going on in the subconscious that bubble up to the conscious. And it also some to some extent, I guess, reconciles with your idea of you are the pilot of your own metaverse, right? Which is this is how does intuition fit in if I'm piloting my own ship through the my own version of the multiverse, excuse me, not metaverse. And so it's fascinating. I think intuition, it can result in creativity in many ways, right? So within the advertising and marketing community, often if you sort of talk about the creatives, right? Those are the people, the art directors, the creative directors, et cetera, the designers. In some cases, the people who will score the music for your commercial or whatever. And those are the creatives. But creativity bubbles to the surface in many ways, particularly strategically, right? And again, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where intuition can become a valuable tool for marketers. If they leave themselves open to those things that may bubble to the surface in a dream, or while they're taking a shower, or while they're driving down the street, and if they remember to write it down in the same way that you should write down the dream when you wake up, or you should like run out of the shower or try to write it in the fog on the wall, right? So you don't forget it. Those kinds of intuitions or an intuitive leaps that your brain takes, again, regardless of what you think about higher powers, it doesn't really matter, right? It's an intuition. It's a positive thing that bubbles to the surface of your brain, and I think you need to be open to giving it a second thought, right? To evaluating, like, was that something I should take action on, or should I just forget about it? And probably there's a whole bunch of people who forget about it, and they should have paid attention.
Yeah, for sure. Going against your intuition is not advised. Like, that usually leads to pain. Maybe not suffering if you're a stoic, but certainly I think it would lead to pain. Uh, I learned recently, last year, a definition for intuition that was quite useful. It's got three components to it. One is intuition comes in unexpected, so just out of the blue, right? Number two, it's emotionally charged neutral. Right? It's not intuition if you're getting all anxious about it, or you're all excited or whatever. Like, oh, I should buy Bitcoin. Oh, I should sell Bitcoin, and you're like all like you're you're anxious or nervous about it, that's not intuition. And then the third piece is that it just stays put. It doesn't jump to the next thought, to the next thought, to the next thought. Right? And next thing you know, you're thinking about, oh, I got to pick up milk from the store on the way home. It just stays there. So that's kind of the definition of intuition, or an intuitive hit that you might get. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting as it relates to those of us in marketing who help other marketers as opposed to purely marketing on our own behalf is that the
Yeah.
more we learn about our clients' businesses, I think the more likely we are to have that little flash of intuition, right? And so, just looking at a client's business at the surface and not really delving in, I think you close yourself out to that intuitive flash of strategy or something that you feel like you should share with them. You might be wrong. I mean, obviously, especially if you have bad data, you don't understand everything about their business yet because you're new to it. But I think part of that process of you being that fresh set of eyes that looks at a client's business and then starts to have your little intuitions pop up about, this might be an interesting idea. Or, let me think about that, or let me dig a little deeper here. I think that ends up being where some of the bigger wins show up.
Hmm. That's an interesting thought. Uh, if I could counter with another idea, what if it's the more we care about the client? So we could come in not knowing anything about their business model, but we really care about their success and about the impact they're having in the world through their company. I think the intuition is on, full tilt. You don't need necessarily to know all the ins and outs of their business. But I do think that when you learn about a business more, that does tend to help you to care more about that business.
I'll go with yours. I like yours better because, obviously owning the domain name We Care, I have to go with the caring philosophy.
Awesome. Well, actually, that's a good segue. Let's talk about this. I don't know, nonprofit kind of charitable help help the world sort of angle that is not common enough in entrepreneurship. I would like to see more of it, but it's definitely been a thread throughout your life. And how did that come about, and how is it showing up for you now with your latest venture, Giving Forward?
Oh, thank you. Um, it was sort of interesting because, once I started to become successful enough to consider writing checks to nonprofits, I sort of thought about, okay, well, how big can these checks be? And I said to myself, well, they can be moderately big, but they're never going to be huge. And I would prefer to have my impact be huge, if at all possible. So, what's a better use of my capital? Is it for me to just write the check, often not knowing even where it's going to go because I can't follow those dollar bills through that particular nonprofit that I've chosen or basket of nonprofits? Or should I try to do what I love doing, which is inventing, right? Being sort of a marketing mad scientist. How can I put my marketing mad scientist hat on and try to figure out how to make an impact, a greater impact that way than I can by writing checks directly? And so, there was a platform that had pre-existed We Care called I Give, but they weren't quite as fully, geeked out from a technology perspective. So I'm like, I think I could build sort of a digital shopping mall. And then I was sort of thinking my first go at it with We Care was actually we built a partially transparent proxy server that could sit in between any LAN and the internet and dynamically throw up splash pages anytime anyone within the LAN was about to navigate to any website that had an affiliate program and ask them to affirmatively opt in, whether or not they wanted to take their affiliate commission and have it go to their cause. But after building the MVP, I was never able to convince any landowner to install it because I failed to take into account the fact that IT was like, wait a minute, one more piece of technology and equipment to monitor and to fix that could break my entire system? No way. I went to universities and I said, you don't understand this. Like, you've got, 100,000 students here. You could generate a significant revenue. You could endow a chair. And they were like, yeah, but I can't. The provosts and presidents and VPs of development could never convince IT to put a partially transparent proxy server in place between their web, their LAN, and the internet. And so I was like, all right, I guess that's not going to work. And that was when I pivoted to going after the individual, right, and getting the individual to install the We Care Reminder browser plugin. But again, I just felt like I could do more as a marketing mad scientist for the social impact than I could individually writing checks. And after Amazon went their way with Smile, and I had to shut We Care down, I continued to obsess about cause marketing and the way in which cause marketing might be able to be deployed in different ways than cause marketing powered e-commerce. And
So just to interrupt for a second, you presented your platform, your idea to Amazon, and they're like, "Whoa, we really like this. We're going to run with that on our own. Thank you. Bye bye." Is something like that
Well,
happen?
they were a partner. We used the Amazon Associates program, right? And so they had been, about 40% of the revenue that we were collecting and then splitting 50-50 between ourselves and the nonprofits that our members had selected individually when they installed the We Care Reminder browser plugin. And so the Amazon team, we got a call and they said, listen, the associates program was never really meant to be used this way, but what you're doing is sort of cool. Why don't you do an A/B split test and prove to us that people's behavior actually changes? And we were not sure that people's behavior did actually change because we had never done the A/B split test before. So we rewrote the browser plugin dynamically to split our millions of members in half. And so half of the people saw the We Care reminder message when they got uh, to Amazon, and the other half only saw it when they got to other sites, but not to Amazon, because we were suppressing that and becoming the control group. And then we looked at the data, and the data showed double-digit lift in conversion rate and double-digit lift in shopping cart size. And we presented the data. In the interim, while we were doing the test, we actually had our biggest nonprofit partners like Save the Children and ASPCA and some others write letters to Amazon saying, we love We Care, we love what We Care is doing. Can you please, allow them to continue? Because we were a little worried, to be perfectly honest, when we were given this challenge because we didn't know what the data was going to say. So the data came out, good, positive with regards to lift. People's behavior did change. We think that them being able to pick their very favorite nonprofit cause had a lot to do with it, particularly at the category level. People tend to have categories of causes that they really love. They may be somewhat indifferent between causes within that category, but they very typically have a strong category of interest. Animals tends to rank number one when you look at it systemically. Houses of worship is number two, and children is number three. And then, obviously there's lots of other subcategories. But in any case, so, the data was good. And so, Amazon chose rather to partner than to build Smile themselves. So there was a little lull where we were shut down in Amazon. We continued to try to see if we could make it work with the remainder of the e-commerce ecosystem, but because we did almost all the marketing to get the installs of the plugin, it made it difficult for the numbers to work. And then at the same time, Chrome was changing the Chrome plugin infrastructure. We were constantly having to go in and completely rewrite our browser plugins. So it was just too much of a headwind. It got to the point where we couldn't pay back the cost of an install because we're giving half of the revenue to the nonprofits, right? So we just didn't have as much leverage to continue operations. So yeah, eventually we wound We Care down.
Hmm. Yeah, you had to let everybody go and shut down the company.
Yep.
And was that a nonprofit or was that a
That was a
for-profit company?
for-profit that started out unprofitable, became profitable, and then became unprofitable again after Amazon
Yeah.
left.
Got the rug pulled from under you.
Yeah, and again, I have
Yeah.
to look at the bigger picture there, right? I have to look at what Amazon's been able to do, putting their muscle behind it, and they've been able to do amazing things. You know, they went down to a 0.5% as to what goes to the nonprofit cause, and that was still considerably above the lift that we had demonstrated. So uh, it was actually brilliant when you think about it, because they chose to create the Amazon Smile Foundation as a nonprofit and funded entirely off of the people who were happily selecting a nonprofit as the grantee from the Amazon Smile Foundation for the money to leave the Amazon Smile Foundation to go to the individual nonprofits. So most corporate philanthropy is arbitrary, right? And it's still funded by the customers. You know, don't think that we didn't pay as consumers for the corporate philanthropy that every corporation does. We did, right? But it was an arbitrary decision that was made at a board level as to spin off the Ford Foundation, or to spin off the J&J Foundation, or to spin off the Rockefeller Foundation, or whatever it is. You know, the new ones, all these new companies are also forming their foundations. And then, you know, their boards are making the decisions of what to do with the money. And by democratizing it, Amazon was actually, and using their foundation almost like a donor advised fund. It was actually brilliant, because they funded they funded the foundation with nearly 100%, or actually probably in excess of 100% of incremental sales, right? Because these were people who'd raised their hand and said, I want to be an Amazon Smile member, and here's the nonprofit I would like to support. Well, and they'll support any nonprofit that's in the IRS database. So all the way down to the
Mm.
local little league, right? You can go ahead and put that into Smile. So, you know, they improved upon it when they were inspired by it. So yeah, I got kudos to them by creating the foundation and having the foundation funded by incremental sales was actually quite brilliant. So, you know, the more people that
Yeah.
join Smile, their changes in consumer shopping behavior actually completely fund the foundation, right? So, and Amazon
Mm.
gets the karma credit, the PR credit of the millions of dollars. But in reality, it was the consumer's behavior change that funded it, right? Which it always is, the consumer's buying behavior that creates the foundation monies in any corporate foundation, right? But in this case, it's really just more democratized.
And you provided that spark uh, for Amazon to go down this path.
I
You,
can't.
with your idea and with the research, the A/B split test that showed the viability of this.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have access to any internal documents to say definitively, but it's highly coincidental if it wasn't an inspiration.
Yeah, that's cool. And so now you have a 501c3. Giving Forward is 501c3 status. Why go down that route? There's a lot of paperwork involved, and compliance that adds to the headache. So what's the benefit?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, again, back to the obstacle was the way with that. I was hoping to resuscitate WeCare, and the next cause marketing powered idea that I had was cause marketing powered content. And I looked at the budgets that did it was spending for clients, and I'm sure it's similar for all of your clients and their budgets, their paid media budgets, is they tend to go to Google, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, etc. And the commonality of all those companies is they get their content for free and they get their eyeballs for free. So they have low to zero what's called audience development costs, which a publisher would typically have, and they have very low content costs, maybe zero. Sometimes they crawl the content. Sometimes you and I create it for them and then help promote it. And so I said, you know, if I could build a platform where the content was free and the eyeballs were free, I could afford to give half of the ad revenue to nonprofits. I could let the content creator pick a nonprofit, and I could let the content consumer pick a nonprofit. It could be sort of like Medium, but ad supported. And then the consumer of the content and the creator of the content could both pick. And I had my team MVP me a platform of that, but I didn't know if it would work or not. And so I decided to go out shopping for publishing assets that might be available. And the first one that became available after I finished the MVP, actually while we were still working on the MVP, was Gothamist and DNA Info, as well as the other ISTs, Chicagoist, LAist, and SFist, were all shut down by Joe Ricketts the billionaire who had been funding this hyperlocal news platform. Gothamist was the biggest, and the New York City office of journalists unionized, and so he went from losing a lot of money to losing a lot of money. And even as a billionaire, I think he sort of ran out of patience and said, like, listen, I can't make this work. You guys were the final straw. You unionized. Now I'm really losing money. So he showed up, I think, the next week and shut the whole thing down, sent everybody home. And I was like, oh, hyperlocal news. Like, how would I apply this cause marketing powered content business to hyperlocal news? And I noodled on it a little bit, and I said, I guess it's like the local council people, the local football coaches, the lawyers that are active in the community, the clergy. They could all create content. It could be community powered journalism, literally community powered journalism. And so I was like, I should try to buy this. And so I put a bid in. I reached out to Joe Ricketts, both directly and through the director of his foundation. He had a foundation as well, which teaches, I believe, kids in Africa to read. And I reached out to both directly, and I said, I have this sort of philanthropic idea. I'd love to use Gothamist and DNA Info to do it since you shut it down. Is it for sale? And so I was the only bidder on the asset till the last day. And then I was told by the
Hmm.
investment bank that I needed to double my bid to stay in the running. And it wasn't barely worth what I was bidding. And I was like, well, doubling it? Absolutely not. I'm out. It ends up that a major philanthropist, I believe it was probably Bloomberg, gave WNYC, the nonprofit radio station in New York City, $1 million to buy it. And I think that was actually a pretty good outcome because they obviously already had a footprint in the community, and that gave them a website, in addition to the WNYC website, to put content. And the editor of Gothamist, who had been laid off along with the rest, she ended up running the relaunch of Gothamist under WNYC. And they gave the other ISTs, Chicagoist, LAist, and SFist, to the nonprofit radio stations in those towns. And again, positive outcome. And 3 weeks later, I noticed there was a Kickstarter, SaveGawker.com. And I was like, oh, I thought Univision bought Gawker. But it ended up Univision had just bought all the other Gawker domains except for Gawker.com. It was considered too toxic. And that they had told the bankruptcy court to not do anything with it for 2 years as part of their deal to buy all the other domains. And so it was coming up for auction. And Elizabeth Spears and James Dell, two folks who used to work at Gawker, were running a Kickstarter to try to raise $500,000 to buy it. And I threw my $100 into the Kickstarter and watched it, and it started to plateau. I think around 80,000, something like that. And it became clear it wasn't going to kick over to the 500,000, which of course was an arbitrary number anyway. Unknown whether that was going to be sufficient to win the bankruptcy auction. And so I called up the plan administrator and said, can I get the Google Analytics logins? Can I get the Google Search Console logins? I want to take a look at this thing. And from an SEO perspective, as you might imagine, I think it had about 12.6 million inbound links, if I remember correctly. Some pretty and good ones too, like not crappy ones. I was like, I don't know if those will count in the future because you never can tell when Google's going to wipe the slate clean. But it's Gawker, and the idea of Gawker for good was sort of a fun Phoenix rising from the ashes story. So I put a bid in, and ended up that most of the other potential bidders, had been scared away when Peter Thiel, the week before the auction, had announced to the press that if anybody bought it and didn't destroy the archives, he was going to sue them out of existence a second time. And so the judge and bankruptcy trustee didn't particularly like that. And so they told me, listen, we're not going to count this first auction because that was tortious interference. And so we're going to run a second auction after we can convince Peter Thiel to rescind his threat, which he did rescind his threat. And they ran a second auction. And then some people with a lot more money showed up for the second one. Not a lot. And Brian Goldberg from Bustle Media Group wanted it. And so I basically didn't fight him for it. So, long story short, I didn't get either of those domains. I went out. There were 3 other domains I tried to buy. I couldn't get any of the deals done. And I was like, I have no idea if this is going to work. And then a friend of mine said, well, why did you just start a nonprofit? Stop trying to whip your checkbook out to try to solve the problem. Why didn't you just start from a dead standstill? And I said, well, That's the whole point, is like, I don't know if it's going to work or not. I wanted to have at least 500,000 uniques a month as my test bed to see if it worked. And eventually, but I just sort of said, okay, I guess I'll have to just go ahead and start the nonprofit. So I started giving forward, and we were working on the tech, updating it to work without third-party cookies. And while we were working on it, the pandemic hit, and I changed my thinking around what our launch domain would be. Originally, it was going to be sort of like Medium, and then I was sort of inspired by what John Krasinski was doing with Some Good News. And I was saying, he had this YouTube channel where he would basically have some just fun content, but then he would usually jump on and do a Zoom interview with a fellow actor that he knew. And, obviously, I think for the launch episode, he did Steve Carell, who he worked with at The Office. And they, of course, already had a chemistry. So you knew it was going to be good. Um, and I was like, if I could get like 20, 50, 100, 200 celebrities to create the content and tag it with the cause, that would be great. But that doesn't fit the medium model. This is a much more video centric model. But the CPMs on video ads are much higher. So it actually is superior. So we decided to launch with goodbuzz.org. And I had some folks I knew on the board of the Miss America organization. And I thought, well, they have a foundation. They give out millions of dollars in scholarships every year. And so they've got a 501c6 that runs the event, and they've got the 501c3 that does the scholarships. I said, they'd be a great partner, and uh, they've got some juice in the brand, and it ended up that they obviously had a difficult time during the pandemic, and so we didn't get as much content created as we wanted for the launch. But that was our launch idea, and then we also tested cause marketing powered events, which was based on the idea that once an event goes virtual, you no longer have capacity constraints. And so we built a sort of a ticketing platform like an Eventbrite, where you get to pick a nonprofit when you register for the event. Again, democratizing the whole idea. And our test went really, really well with a sponsor. And just I realized events are much more work, like 5 times more work than we anticipated. So we put the events platform on the back burner and then concentrated on Sweeps for a Cause while we continue to iterate on Good Buzz. And so Sweeps for a Cause is our clone of Omaze and Prizo, but run by a nonprofit benefiting all the other nonprofits. And that's live now. So it's been quite the adventure on the giving forward side to get where we are. And it's not cash positive yet as a nonprofit, but we know we'll get there.
So what does that mean, sweeps for a cause? So sweepstakes for a cause, how is that different or similar to Charity Buzz or an Omaze?
So Charity Buzz is an auction, right? So obviously in an auction, only one person wins. The same company that runs Charity Buzz also runs Prizeo, which is a much similar clone to Omaze. And the concept behind Prizeo and Omaze is that everybody's a little bit selfish and a little bit giving. And so if you can push both of those emotional buttons at the same time, you're more likely to get a person to pull out their credit card. And they demonstrated it. Omaze demonstrated it, and so did Prizeo. There's just it's when you push the both buttons, you're going to get a greater response. Anywhere from double to 5x conversion rate on donation pages that have the sweepstakes. And obviously, there's an elasticity of response depending on how big the thing is that the person's got a chance of winning. And Omaze went that direction. Omaze said, all right, let's go big, right? Let's do houses. Let's do Porsche 911s. Let's do BMWs and Bentleys. And obviously, for many people, that's what it's going to take to get them off the fence. And Prizeo was more of a platform for nonprofits to use. So the nonprofit has to bring the prize themselves. So Prizeo ends up being primarily experiential, right? So they'll get some nonprofit and celebrity will team up and do something special that you can enter for a chance to win. And so perhaps the conversion rate is a little bit lower on that because, yeah, I do get to meet this celebrity. And so that's really valuable to me. But the common theme there is the lift in response, the lift in conversion rate. And so we said, well, we looked at the net to the nonprofit for Omaze, and we said, well, by the time they buy the Porsches and the houses and everything, there's just not that much money left for the nonprofits, and that gets distributed through a DAF CAF America, I think, is the DAF that they use, donor advised fund that they use to distribute the funds to the nonprofits. And again, it works, and it works great, right? And the venture capitalists that gave them, I think, 127 million agree that it works great, and it is sort of a win-win, literally, for everybody. I just thought that as a nonprofit, we could put a little twist on the model, in that we could get prizes donated by merchants after the launch, because we just recently launched, so it's just our own cash at the moment, or my cash at the moment. 4,000 for the winner, and then 1,000 for their chosen nonprofit cause. But I've already had conversations with brands, retailers, manufacturers, and travel companies who all said, once you get your traffic levels up, it'll be way easier for us to justify this, right? So just get your traffic up to like 100,000 a month, something along those lines, and I can easily get it rubber stamped. Right now you've got no traffic, so it'll be harder for us to internally sell it. But that's going to be the idea: is we just spin up these sweepstakes with donated prizes as a prize provider, right? We take care of all the administration, et cetera. And for the bigger stuff, we can even do co-reg with the merchant, right? So that they get definitive marketing benefit. We can, put learning videos in the user generated in the user stream, right? So the user gets extra entries for watching videos and learning about the product or the service, et cetera. So we can deliver all this marketing benefit in a philanthropic way, and take some sponsorship money from the prize donors as well, but also use this landing page where you've got that giving and getting, right, potentially a chance to win, to dramatically increase conversion rates. So we're out there getting a bunch of PSA ad inventory from the programmatic ad ecosystem, because we'll use any nonprofit as the beneficiary, right? We're cause agnostic. So if we talk to a publisher and the publisher says, well, our CEOs on the board of Autism Speaks, we'd love to help them. I'll say, we're going to get probably double or triple the conversion rate to donations if we run our landing page instead of theirs, because there's the selfish element. People want to win the $4,000. So the idea that we can sort of change the dynamics, change the KPIs to create literally a win-win situation for everybody, the nonprofits, ourselves, and at least one happy winner on the consumer side, right? That's going to be super fun. I'm also really excited about potentially getting influencers involved, letting them package up our $4,000 cash sweepstakes, as if the winner wins and wants to go have lunch with the influencer, they can choose to use the cash that way. So it'll be really interesting to see where it goes. Again, as I'm a bit of a bulldog on trying to continue to be an agile developer, an agile marketer, and try things until I figure out what works.
Yeah, MVP, minimum viable
Exactly.
product. Yeah, awesome. And so if you could get every nonprofit in the world to change their donate page in some way that would get much greater rate of donations, what would that be? Would it be to have prizes available for people who make donations, kind of like a sweepstakes kind of deal for every single nonprofit that's looking to get donations? Or what
I
would
think
it be?
there's different levers for different people with regards to what excites them about donating. There's also been the tchotchkes and swag that has worked for many nonprofits as well. Like, you hit a particular level of donation and you get a tote bag, right? Some people are going to be more motivated by a tote bag than they will by a sweepstakes. I think the real key is to understand that for any particular nonprofit, there are different segments of your audience, and different segments of your audience are going to be driven by different emotional triggers. And so, for the portion of your audience that might be a little bit more excited if they can win something, that's great. If you have the ability to deliver some kind of special experience as a nonprofit because a VIP or a celebrity, what's different between our platform and Prizeo, because you can lease Prizeo's platform to do it, is we don't only bring our own organic traffic to the mix, but we'll take if Stefan, if your local nonprofit that's small happens to know a VIP and can get a lunch donated in as a prize, we can run that across the broader ecosystem. Let the consumers pick the cause that they want. Just leave that particular cause as a default. And what happens then is the people who are mostly interested in the prize, they just leave the default. And so the 80% of the money goes to that nonprofit, actually 90%, because we give an extra 10% to the nonprofit if they facilitate a prize, right? And what that extra 10% means is if the person comes in on your nonprofit, but then changes their mind to the ASPCA, we still give the 10% to the nonprofit that brought in the prize. So it's a really cooperative, collaborative environment, right? So again, will that VIP lunch or Zoom, conversation with Dwayne the Rock Johnson, will how well will that do, right? It's going to depend on the VIP, right? The Rock, I think, has 56 million Facebook followers, and even with a bad edge rank, that's going to reach some people, right? So we hope that the word gets out to the influencers, to the VIPs, to the celebrities that they can pick any cause they want. They can just use our platform, and we'll figure out how to orchestrate it into something that makes everybody happy.
That's really cool. So if a nonprofit founder or marketing person is listening, try and get somebody like Mark Cuban to donate a lunch, and then talk to Kevin.
Absolutely. And we plan to eventually build an auction clone as well. So eventually I'll want Mark Cuban to donate 2 lunches, and we'll auction one off and sweeps off the other. Because we'll want the hedge fund manager to pay $94,000 to have lunch with Mark. And we'll want the barista at Starbucks to say, "Oh, I can't afford that auction price, but I love I love Mark Cuban, and I want to win lunch with him, but I'll put $20 in to support the cause," right? So there's a lot of ways you can slice the donation cat.
That's such a great idea. You're such an innovator and inventor. It's really cool. Awesome. Well, we're out of time. So if our listener or viewer is interested in helping you with your mission of making an impact with giving forward, or they want to learn from you, you've got your 4 books, you have lots of articles, you have, I'm sure, some video-based content as well that they could learn from as well. Where
well,
should they
easiest
go?
way to reach me is on LinkedIn, but you can always also email me, kevin@givingforward.org.
Awesome. And then what's the best place to go for them to consume your books and articles and all that?
Those are sort of spread out, but the emarketingassociation.com, which I also own, is a great way for them to see podcasts, including one with you.
Awesome. All right. So that was fun, and I think, at least I hope, also inspiring, because we can make such a profound ripple effect, even if we're just doing marketing services for our clients. We can do something really profound, and I really love what you're up to in the world.
Thank you.
So keep it up. And listener, get out there and do something amazing, and we'll catch you in the next episode. In the meantime, have a great week.